As you are making your way quickly to your seats, we are about to move into our observance for, first observance for this weekend. Today's observance will be our Women's History observance. We have a very special friend that has joined us to help us continue on our journey of learning and awareness and building our capacity so we can take action. And certainly we know, based on the report that we just heard and what Mary just said about the direct attack on women and the culture that is being created here inside the Beltway and spreading throughout the country, this is that time. We go forward with the will of those who came before, and those who have never stopped putting one foot in front of another, to some finer tomorrow, distant, but always possible. Those are the words from journalist and writer Rebecca Tracer to settle and frame you into the time we're going to spend together. We know that no election, not one election, will turn us away from the focus and the values and the mission of this organization. Today, as we do every February, we will use this time to hear the wisdom of a woman who is leading work on issues that affect our students' ability to learn and to live and to thrive. During this very critical time for our students and educators, I know that the words of our guest speaker will encourage us, it will inspire us, it will challenge us, and it will refuel us for the battle that is ours today. As the 10th president, 4th woman, and first Hispanic person to lead a nonpartisan grassroots organization, Common Cause, she stands on the front lines of the work to uphold the core values of our democracy. Here to tell us more about this phenomenal activist and sister friend is a woman who stands in her passion and in her own power and purpose every day. We have the chair, there she is, Ms. Jamila of our Women's Issues Committee. Give it up, give it up, give it up. You know, every day she uses her brilliance to advance the rights of women and girls across this country. Jamila.
It pains me just a little bit to be here this morning, standing behind all this Eagles paraphernalia. Being a proud product of Kansas City. But on any given Sunday, someone else has the opportunity. Thank you so much, President Pringle, for that introduction. And good morning, officers, executive committee, and board members. The purpose and the objective of the Women's Observance is to strengthen and grow our professional knowledge as racial and social justice advocates around issues reflecting the power and promise of women and girls in our schools and communities. I am pleased to introduce Virginia K. Solomon, who is the president and CEO of Common Cause, a 1.5 million member nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to upholding the core values of American democracy. Common Cause works to create open, honest, and accountable government that serves the public interest, promotes equal rights, opportunity, and representation for all, and empower all people to make their voices heard in the political process. A lifelong social justice and civil rights advocate, Virginia began her career when she co-founded a youth-led organization. She helped organize at-risk youth to build grassroots support for job and educational opportunities in Connecticut. She then worked to give voice to the newest Americans with a leadership role in Immigrant Rights Organization, where she helped pass the Maryland DREAM Act. Virginia is recognized nationally for her leadership, having testified before Congress on election administration multiple times. And in 2020, she was named in People en Español's Most Powerful Woman of the Year list. In 22 and 23, she was named one of the most influential people in Washington by the Washingtonian magazine. In December 2023, Virginia K. Solomon was named as president and CEO and the first Hispanic woman person to lead her organization in the permanent role. Virginia assumed her new role in February 2024, but prior to that, she held the role of CEO of the League of Women Voters. While there, she led the organization to great success, expanding state capacity, tripling the budget and staff, and increasing membership by 30%. She and the League created with spearheading the No More Excuses campaign that moved President Biden to support ending the filibuster for voting rights. Now, the Common Cause National Governing Board Chair, Martha Tierney, said, Virginia's entire career has been grounded and given a voice to many young Americans, new Americans, women of all ages and races fighting for an inclusive democracy. Sounds a lot like what I do with the Women's Issues Committee. So please join me in welcoming Virginia K. Solomon as NEA's Board Women's Observance Speaker.
Thank you. It's always weird when you hear people read your bio because you're just like, oh, wow. But you get to a certain age. I think it's like once you hit your 50s, you realize you have like a lot of years behind you at this point. So yeah, you do a lot of things over the course of 30 plus years, I guess. I'm really grateful to be here, not only because me and my friend Becky here are celebrating our Eagles, or Eagles if you're from Philly. I won't call it a win. I'm sorry, Kansas City. I'm sorry, Jamila. We gave some punishment.
Sweet revenge.
It was, look, my heart, I was in Arizona 2 years ago. My heart was broken. I went home so deflated. I had a Super Bowl 57 shirt. I just knew I still wore it proudly, but now I get to have one that says Super Bowl champions. Yeah. So there we go. It's really great to be here with all of you. It's Valentine's Day, so I guess I'm here with my red, which maybe y'all might have thought I was a Chiefs fan, but this is in honor of Valentine's Day. But it's really good to be here with all of you. I think when I'm thinking about women's observance and what it means, I'm going to be honest with you. This is about women, what I'm going to talk to you about, but it's also about all of us, because this is a really interesting moment that we're in. I've been at Common Cause now, it'll be a year on February 20th. And prior to that, I was at the League of Women Voters, and I will say this is also the League's 105th anniversary, so shout out to my folks at the League of Women Voters. But Common Cause is really important for me, and one of the things that attracted me to my organization was a very simple thing, and it's our tagline, holding power accountable. And as a nonpartisan organization, that's a hard thing to do, because when we're holding the Democrats accountable, they say we're being too conservative. And when we're holding the Republicans accountable, they say we're a mouthpiece for the left. So you can never really get it right, which is okay. In this day and time, I think there is no such thing as nonpartisanship in many ways. It's just being fully independent and equal opportunity critics, because we have to hold power accountable. And now more than ever, power needs to be held accountable. We're doing lots of things. For example, we've launched something called our Fire Elon Musk campaign, because we don't believe that billionaires should have full, complete access to our information, our data, our systems, or have 19-year-olds with the nickname or the pseudonym online Big Balls being able to make decisions about what government workers have a job or do not. So I'm just starting with that. If you are somebody who doesn't like controversial speeches, this is your trigger warning and an opportunity to leave the room. But I will say that when Merwin Scott reached out to me, and I have to just give kudos to Merwin. He is. I love me some Merwin, because he is just a great guy and just a good human being, in addition to being brilliant. He reached out to me and he let me know that I had been invited to speak. And I, of course, said yes, because it's A, Merwin, but B, Becky. I mean, come on, it's Becky Pringle. And actually, Becky was in that filibuster fight with me. I don't know if you remember when you and I first met was several years ago, and we were, Martin Luther King III, we were doing remarks pushing for an end to the filibuster, because we were really close on voting rights at the time, but for that darn filibuster. But also because I have a tremendous amount of respect for you all and the work you're doing. Community matters now. And so also for me, there's lots of reasons to say yes. I couldn't think of any to say no, but it's community. And this is a community. Educators are a community. And the more I'm in community with people who inspire me, the better I am as a leader myself. So who better to be in community with on Valentine's Day? And of course, I could not start without talking about my own education story, or my own educator story. So while I was introduced to you today as the former CEO of the League of Women Voters, and the current president and CEO of Common Cause, I am also one of only 56% of students who graduated from high school in my city of Hartford, Connecticut in 1990. Hartford had a 56% graduation rate. Anybody from Connecticut here? There you go. Buckley High School, there you go. At the time, the poverty rate was 27%, and more than 10% of our population in the city lived in subsidized or public housing. All to say that the odds were not in my favor. I should not be standing here with you today. I am one of very few people who got the opportunity to have a life that every child should be entitled to. So I didn't take the traditional path here either. Has anybody ever been to China? Anybody? Okay. I went to China a few years ago. I promise there's a reason for this story. I went there a few years ago. It was a bucket list trip. Well, it was actually not an intentional bucket list trip. My husband and I were looking at cheap air flights. There's a website called Skyscanner, and you can click to everywhere, and it'll tell you all the places you can go within this certain time frame. And we actually wanted to go to Spain, but there was these tickets to China for like $400 round trip, and I was like, let's go to China. And he was like, China? I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to see the Great Wall. So of course we get to China, different experience, another story, different day. But I really wanted to go to the Great Wall. And I had just seen Barack and Michelle Obama, who had taken a trip there a few years prior, and they had gone, and I thought, wow, this looks fascinating. So when you go to the Great Wall, they give you two options. They say, do you want to do the easy part of the wall, or do you want to do the wild side of the wall? Now, mind you, like a few years before, I had climbed a volcano in El Salvador called Pacaya. So, El Salvador, presente, huh? So I said, okay, let's do the wild side. Well, the other side, which was the, I guess, the regular side, or the easier side, you can take a ski lift up. This one, you actually hike. I was thinking it can't be that bad. True to my nature, I never take the easy path. So the wild side is not actually restored completely like other parts of China. Mind you, the Great Wall is like not a little wall, it's like huge. It's narrow, it's steep, it's very hard to climb. I have photographic evidence, trust me, I'm like filled, drenched with sweat. But I had a guide who helped me to navigate. And it was tough, now I will not, it was long, let me just say that, because you run out of breath. These stairs are not, when I say steep, it's like climbing a ladder. But I made it. And it, for me, was one of my toughest personal accomplishments because I climbed the wild side of the wall, conquering that wild side. Likewise, when I was young, I had a teacher who helped me navigate my way. I had a guide. Even when my journey, like that wall, felt very, very impossible. You heard some of the demographics, but one thing I left off was that in 1989, there was a court case that many of you are probably familiar with called Sheff versus O'Neill. And it was a follow-up to Brown v. Board of Education. Because unbeknownst to me, I and the other students in my district attended segregated schools. Yes, in Hartford, Connecticut, in the 80s, we still had segregated schools. And there were very few kids in my Black and Puerto Rican community who had it better than me, so I never realized that there was something wrong or different about my experience. I didn't have anything else to measure it against. I didn't know that what was happening was actually discrimination. We didn't have access to information the way that kids do now. There was no Google. We were lucky if we made it to the card catalog and it was organized at the library. So that guide, that teacher, helped me to get hired as a student organizer. And my job was to create awareness for other students around the case and to help get young people involved because we organize, right? Teachers are organizers at heart. And I was 17, and I will be honest, I did it for the money. Because what kid doesn't like to make a few dollars? So it wasn't something that I really understood at the moment. But that experience, it did something to me. It sparked something inside of me that I didn't know existed. And at that point, it was a passion for social justice that was born. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I did stay on the wild side of the wall for a while because I also became a teenage mom and struggled for a long time. But that teacher stayed with me as a guide. He helped me get a scholarship to go to college, and eventually, with the help of other caring adults in my life, things started to change. So going back to Sheff, that battle actually went on for 33 years. And in fact, it took the case from 1989 until 2022, just 2 years ago, to get justice. And what it taught me, that case, was that even when we win, sometimes we are not going to see the results of that win for a long time. Sometimes the beneficiaries of those wins aren't us. But the fights are still important. And the fights that you're facing today are important. The investments that you're making in students today, they're important. And I will say it is not lost on me that I'm here during Black History Month and less than a month after Donald Trump has taken office with a promise to dismantle the Department of Education, when there has been a series of executive orders that have essentially removed civil rights from our classrooms. that he's sought to outlaw diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, blurred the lines between church and state, forced LGBTQ plus children, families, and teachers to live in fear, to have immigrant children, families, and educators worry if they will be removed from their schools and places of employment. And to top it off, they're rewriting the way that our country should be, the history of our country should be taught, under the guise of patriotic education, which we all know is really indoctrination of white supremacist propaganda. But you're educators and you know this, you see what's happening. I was scrolling on social media about a week or so ago and I came across videos. I don't know if anybody's on TikTok. Yes, that is my guilty pleasure. I go on TikTok and I scroll. But the videos, I ended up on Educator Talk somehow because the algorithm, I must have liked something, whatever. And I saw video after video after video, and one teacher said, we put our lives on the line every day in the classroom. We're ready to take a bullet for our kids. Do you think that we're scared of ICE? He said, I just need to make sure folks know, get my bail money ready. Not my babies and not my classroom. And another teacher said they would be damned if they forced a child to change their self-identity in their classroom by forcing them to be referred to as she or he rather than them, because pronouns never hurt anyone. So as I was thinking about what to say to you all today, I realized two things. Educators have always been protectors, whether it was myself or the children who are here today experiencing a great amount of fear. And you've always served in that role because you do your work from a place of love. Because let's face it, I don't think anybody here is doing it for the money. I don't know. And I think that this being a Women's Observance Day and the fact that women are the majority of teachers in the United States, this actually makes sense because women are, by nature, loving caregivers and protectors. Fierce protectors, I would add. So first, I want to just offer my gratitude for what you do, because you love and protect so many people. And in order to face the years ahead, yes, I can't believe I'm saying it, yes, years, you're gonna need to draw from your role as protectors, operating from a place of love so that you can help to defend our future. And it's a big ask, I know. One that's gonna require you to draw from strengths and courage of those who came long before us. People like Mary McLeod Bethune, an educator and civil rights activist who fought to advance equity through education, at great risk to herself in the Jim Crow South. And she founded a school that later became a high school with only $1.15 in 1904. The high school then became a college that is now known as Bethune-Cookman University, and she did something amazing. She created a space for Black students when none existed. She found a way out of no way. Or people like your own Carol Watchler, one of your own former members who in 1985, at the height of the AIDS epidemic and discrimination towards the LGBTQ plus community, fought to include sexual orientation in New Jersey anti-discrimination laws and helped to carve a path here at NEA nationally to fight for justice for educators and students. They chose the wild side of the wall on their journey as well. They could have just gone on about their lives, not being disruptors, but instead they became our guides. And the fights that we face today, they are big and they are real. Just as real as the ones that they fought. I also want to name in this moment that I realize that some of you are working in places where the attacks on education, our democracy, and civil rights, they don't feel new. Not at all. You've been living it every single day. And that's undeniable, and we have to learn from your experiences, and I hope that you are sharing them very loudly because you have been on the front lines. But I also don't want anyone to think that this isn't different. This is different than anything that we've experienced before. This is the culmination of decades of work to end voting rights, which were already restricted, free and fair elections, and the broad protection of civil liberties, to create what Harvard professor Stephen Levitsky refers to as competitive authoritarianism, where Constitution exists, elections happen, but the system itself is not democratic. At no time since the Civil War have we faced a greater threat to the viability of our nation. At no time. And yes, McCarthyism and the civil rights movement happened at the same time. Yes, we went through the women's rights movement. We've gone through the movement for LGBTQ communities, the movement for Black lives. Imagine all of those things happening at once. And let us not forget that our union was already imperfect. We've only been considered a full constitutional democracy by global experts since 1965 when the Voting Rights Act was passed. We are only coming up on 60 years of actually being a full democracy. And in 2024, just last year, we were named as a flawed democracy by The Economist. And back in 2022, Protect Democracy's Authoritarian Index warning gave us a 19.2% likelihood of having a full democratic breakdown in the next 5 years. We're midway through that projection. And I would argue that the likelihood has increased. So it's happening. It's happening fast. I don't know about all of you, but I have learned that I have become someone who asks a lot of questions every single day. I'm asking the same questions. And those questions are things like, what? Did that just happen? Are you freaking kidding me? I wasn't saying freaking though. I'm just being polite in company. And it feels like a whirlwind, and that is a strategy. That Steve Bannon remarks that many people heard about flooding the zone. There's a theory that if you put 3 things out every single day, it distracts. And I recently told a reporter that when they asked about what's happening and was I concerned, and I said, I'm more concerned about what's happening that we're not hearing about. So there are a lot of things to be worried about, but there are also things that give me hope in this moment, and that brings me back to you. Because women have always been on the front lines of defending our country and righting our nation when it was off course. Often, history has forgotten us because history was written from a male perspective. But we still have examples that we can look to, the ones who made it through to be able to have their stories told. Abigail Adams, going back to the founding of the Constitution, she was counseling her husband about having to include the abolishment of slavery in the Constitution, which clearly he didn't win that argument. But she also reminded him to remember the ladies. Or Harriet Tubman, who led hundreds of enslaved people to freedom with no GPS and only stars to guide her. Or Dolores Huerta, who fought for economic justice for farm workers. Dr. Dorothy Height, who was a founding board member of my organization, Common Cause, who helped to organize the March on Washington in 1963. Fun fact about Dr. Height, it was, I guess, an appropriate last name because she was a tall woman. And there are lots of pictures in history that you'll see of the men who led the civil rights movement. She was often placed on the end. Fun fact, lots of those pictures cropped her out. She's missing from many of the photographs, but she was there. Or Liz Cheney, who helped hold Donald Trump accountable and lost her seat in the process. Or Becky Pringle, who holds power accountable every single day when she shows up to lead this organization. And I will tell you, Becky is not afraid to speak truth to power. So we must ask ourselves, what will we do now when our moment has arrived? Will we comply with these executive orders and allow them to dismantle our government, to sell it off to the lowest bidder through privatization, or will we fight? One of the biggest lessons that I've learned from Donald Trump and his billionaire friends is that they don't easily comply. When there are laws that prevent them from doing what they want in the name of serving themselves, they find loopholes. They delay, they find workarounds. Imagine if we did the same thing in the name of justice. NEA, your superpower is your membership. Imagine how much good trouble you are capable of getting into it if you're willing to use your creativity. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody to break the law. I'm not. But I am challenging you to think outside of the box. Just because you can't teach some things in the classroom doesn't mean you can't teach it somewhere else. YouTube, book clubs, after-school programs, you can teach. There are ways. Where are the loopholes? See, they can ban people from entering our country, but they can't ban you from protecting the children they try to remove. They can ban books in schools, but they can't ban books from being available other ways. They can ban words and try to change policies, but they can't ban your spirit. They can't ban your will, your disobedience, your determination, or your defiance. So as you consider all of the terrible things that we're facing, I ask you personally in your districts and here at NEA, what will you do? At my organization, Common Cause, our tagline is, as I said, we hold power accountable. And we recently launched a Fire Elon Musk campaign. And many of our staff were afraid. What if we're targeted by the administration, they asked. It's scary when you have somebody like Elon Musk who has access to so much. People are afraid. And I remember my board asking me after the election if I was comfortable being so public, given that we knew what would be coming. And my answer to them was, I knew there was a chance this could happen when you hired me. Everybody's not going to be able to walk this journey right now. Everybody's not going to be out front. Everybody's not going to be the face of this movement. Some people can find the loopholes. But you can't hold power accountable if you're worried about what ifs. That is part of their tactic. That is part of their strategy. They want you to be afraid. So at my organization, we're prepared. We've tightened up our systems and prepared for the worst because this is our mission moment. But the one thing I will say that we all need to consider as we stand in this moment is when the history of this time is written, will it say we won? Because it has to. There is no other option. And only time is going to tell if we remain an imperfect democracy that continues to aspire to its ideals, or if we meet the end of this American experiment. It's up to us to determine that answer. So my question to you is, will you join me as we climb the wild side of the wall together? Thank you all.